Hello and welcome to another episode of The Scramble. I'm your host, Sarah Montes de Oca. Today, we'll discuss Hillary Clinton's use of her private email to conduct official government business while serving as Secretary of State. Also, a recent lawsuit levied against the National Security Agency by Wikipedia over violating constitutional protections. And finally, the latest ranking of the UNLV Boyd Law School by U.S. News and World Report, which is now at an all-time high. But before we dive in, let me introduce our panel. First, we have Hunter Terry, a UNLV alum, Brittany Altamirano, a graduate student in journalism and media studies, David Sarabian, a senior majoring in political science, and finally, Jonathan Doc Bradley, a political science doctoral candidate. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
So, as Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton regularly used her private email address to conduct State Department business. She recently stated that her reasoning behind this was she did not want to be carrying around two cell phones, one for each email account. Upon request for her government-related emails, Hillary deleted 31,000, quote, personal emails before forwarding what she said were the relevant ones to the government. House Speaker John Boehner is expected to announce an investigation into her email practices as Secretary of State. Is the forthcoming House investigation warranted, and how will this affect her potential run for presidency? So, who wants to start?
I think that this is kind of a fabricated scandal. It seems over the past week, I read that the New York Times, who kind of broke the story in the first place, their public editor, Margaret Sullivan, said that they had a lot of faults in that article. She admitted that there were, until after Hillary's time there, in early 2013, these regulations weren't actually in place and required to be followed, and that the Obama cabinet has numerous ways of handling emails, and it wasn't until then that they would have been required to actually use the government server. So it seems that, I think that it's that combined with the fact that the whole policy is for record keeping, it's for having the things for posterity in the future, not as so much as an oversight thing. I don't think this is quite the scandal it's been treated as.
Doc, what do you think?
I think if you attach the name Clinton to it, it's scandal. I mean, you could say there's someone spit gum out on the road, and if it's Clinton gum, then by God, we're going to have an investigation over it. No, it's not illegal, what she did. It is somewhat unethical to say that she didn't know that you were supposed to do this. I mean, she'd been in government for a long time. But, you know, I mean, you go back to the 90s with Clinton, and even before that when they were in Arkansas, both her husband and herself have had this issue with secrecy and almost being overly secretive on almost everything they do. To their credit, though, their emails are kept on a server which is guarded by the Secret Service, which is probably better than the server that's at the, so they might even have more security on it. It would be a non-issue if it was anybody else's issue, like Bush's emails that suddenly disappeared before investigation, Bush and Florida's emails that are not all clear, but it's a Clinton name. And the idea that she didn't think this would come back, that shows me as somewhat of an issue of this continued thinking of being above the speculation or just not caring about the speculation. At this point, she might not have to.
Brittany, do you think because she, didn't follow the protocol that this will affect her opinion or people's opinion of her and seeing her as dishonest?
Well, I think she's done a few other things that have affected people's opinions about her and have affected her candidacy for presidency. And so I think it goes a little bit further beyond just this email scandal. I tend to agree with you that it's not necessarily can be labeled as a scandal, but I do think it kind of upholds this idea of what is professional and what is not, what we want to see in our candidates and what we don't. And so I think when it comes to, yes, the secrecy, this is not necessarily something that we want to see, so I think it will affect that. But I don't think this is solely going to affect it. I think it's a couple other things as well. So.
Well, this just strikes me as just another way that Republicans, through John Boehner, are just trying to take Clinton down as many notches as they can before she runs for president. She hasn't announced whether she's going to run or not, and this seems to be an example of almost a shadow campaign of just the Republicans trying everything they can to knock her down. They came out with a study not too long ago, maybe about a year or two, that people will believe negative ads as much as they will positive ads. And if they can't take her down as much as they can. They'll do anything that they can to take her down, just because she has announced she's running for president. And this just seems like merely just a political move, especially all the attention that she got, especially because the news report that came out yesterday was that John Boehner was planning to announce an investigation. They're just trying to suck in the news cycle for as long as they can with this story. Instead of John Boehner just saying, yes, we're going to announce an investigation, they're trying to reap it for all that it's worth as long as they can, just to discredit Clinton.
I think actually, a lot of these scandals come off as purely political. And I think this actually doesn't. I think when New York Times broke it, I don't think that it's a real scandal, as I mentioned, but I don't think this is just partisan. I think that there was, the way it was initially reported, it did seem like a scandal. It was reported originally that she was breaking complete protocol, that she may have broken the law, that she was doing something that she was not supposed to do. I do agree that the spirit of the law, as she knew, was that she was supposed to have these records saved so they could then be provided to an archive and kept. But it wasn't the law, and I don't think it's Republicans' fault that the New York Times broke it. I do think that they're pursuing it, drawing it out, because she hasn't even announced she's running yet. She seems to have no opposition from the Democrats. I mean, even popular ones like Warren has said she's not running, and she's the biggest name out there right now that's not Hillary, it seems like. And I think that the Republicans are smart, because from every poll, Hillary is demolishing everyone. So they've got to do something to try and hurt her. And this is when she's not even involved in the race yet. There's no primary opponent to attack her. This is at least something to remind people of maybe past scandals, of their already preconceived notions of the Clintons. I mean, she's been being harassed since Whitewater, and there was the murder accusations in the early 90s. I mean, if I was her, I'd be pretty secretive too, because she knows what happens with her business, and Republicans try and drag it in the mud.
Do you think she is guilty of something, shady that she's been hiding, and that possibly what she's withholding some information, or?
Well,
Go ahead and answer that question.
you just said guilty. We've already discussed that it isn't even breaking the law, and it's already getting
Not
changed.
breaking the law, but possibly.
Even in this discussion, we've changed it. We've been breaking out the word scandal and breaking the law and guilty. And from the sounds of it, if you look at the facts, she really didn't do anything regulatory or legal.
Well, not following protocol, isn't that breaking rules?
Well, it wasn't an established protocol. It was just kind of, this goes back to the technology thing. Washington is way behind on the technology, so they hadn't established really any sort of protocol other than, save your emails, and that was just an assumed.
And the fact that 2 cell phones.
Yeah,
she didn't want to carry around.
That was. She's really good at this. She's been doing it for 20 years. She knows how to. I only have 1 cell phone. I mean, it's a non-scandal, but it's one of those things. You have people who hate her and they're only looking for evidence to hate her more, and people who love her and are only looking for stuff to defend her on. And as far as the people in the middle, it's so far out from the election. I don't know if it's going to damage her. The idea that she's not running, if she goes any much farther, if she goes through the summer and then does not declare then she's actually really screwing over the Democratic Party. She might be doing it to deflect. There's no idea what it is, but she sealed up so many people to even make this comment. She said she's not running. She's been running since she was born. In the long run, does this hurt her? No, it's just more food for the fodder for people who hate her.
I'd agree. People that hate her are already going to hate her. People that love her aren't really going to be affected. The important thing she has to worry about is the people who might be in the middle. And does she think they'll care about this? And with everything laid out, the facts, and when the protocols came into place, the more we learn about this, the less I think the people in the middle are really going to care.
Well, let's move on to this next topic. Wikipedia has filed a lawsuit against the NSA over their mass media surveillance programs. Wikipedia stated that the mass surveillance programs violate the law and constitutional protections by tapping into the backbone of the internet. It is from this backbone that much of the internet's traffic flows through. Will the government be able to successfully say that the case falls under the state secrets provision, suppressing the lawsuit? And is Wikipedia's lawsuit justified? Are they even a legitimate party to the lawsuit? Who wants to start with this topic?
I'll get out of the way first. Yes, there is a valid lawsuit. No, it doesn't fall under state secrets. However, it will probably fall under state secrets, and the lawsuit will probably be thrown out because I mean, the attitude, the thing of it is they're not collecting data to the extent of where they're looking at everybody's emails. They're specifically they're data mining for specific things. And by doing that, they'll be able to say, no, we're not doing a complete across the board breach. We're actually just tailor specific searching for stuff coming in from overseas, which is the right of the State Department. It's clearly data. It's clearly looking at everybody's transmissions from overseas. Would be the same as stopping every letter that comes in from overseas, opening up, and then searching it for specific words. But as far as thank goodness Wikipedia is out there defending our rights, because I don't think people really understand the complexity of it or how much is actually being mined. But yeah, it's my attitude. It's right. It's within the law. It doesn't matter. It's going to get thrown out, or it's going to get settled in NSA's favor.
I would agree. I think this is a complicated issue that most people don't understand, and it is good that Wikipedia has this suit going, because the NSA, it's been embroiled in scandal, and this is a real scandal after scandal ever since Snowden dropped those bombs. It's crazy how deep they've gone. I think the problem with this lawsuit might be standing and them proving that they have been injured by these searches. Now, their argument is that it'll impede the traffic of information over national boundaries. People will be worried to do it. But they've got to prove that it's happened and that they've been injured by this to actually have legal standing to sue. And the only way they can prove that is if the NSA gives them records of people that they've spied on and stuff. And so unless those are already out there, which they don't appear to be, I don't think they're going to pass. They're going to be able to prove legal standing to get this to even get to what you were talking about.
The Supreme Court and courts in general, they love to punt on things. They love to say, you're not a party to a lawsuit. They love doing that partly because they know they can set a precedent, and you don't always want to set a precedent unless you're sure about it or unless you want to. The Supreme Court is especially vehement on that. It's that they're going to probably say, Wikipedia, you're really not a party to this, and they're just going to squash it. The real victors in this are the lawyers, who are going to get paid incredibly large amounts of money to take this case forward. And perhaps even Wikipedia knows that it's going to get squashed. Perhaps they even know that it's going to not work. But like they did with the Wikipedia blackout with Pippa, I believe it was, Pippa and SOPA and Pippa, is that Wikipedia has at least a record of, we will be activist with this and let you know that this is an issue, even if they know it's not going to have that much of an effect. And so for that, I think I applaud them for at least standing up for Americans' rights, or at least bringing it to show, but I highly doubt that they even have a chance to win this, because they're not a party.
Do you think this will prohibit people from contributing to Wikipedia now, and not prohibit, but kind of scare them off, and people will be more I guess, think much more before putting in their commentary onto the site?
I think the NSA, the issues with secrecy and the NSA and, privacy has been an issue for a while now. And so having people's information out on the internet, that's accessible to anyone at this point. And so I don't necessarily think that it's anything different than what we've seen. And so people already are contributing to these things. They're already putting private information out there, and so I don't think it's going to hinder them, but I do think it'll bring some sort of awareness to those that may not. It's strange to think that people won't be aware of things like this, but it'll bring some kind of awareness to those who may not know as much. But I think, like they said, it's going to get thrown out. But kudos to them for sticking up for our rights. I want to know actually the amount of lobbying done on the other side of it to see kind of what kind of money is thrown in opposition, but that's another topic for another day maybe.
I had a quick question of clarification. If I understand the lawsuit properly, one of the things they're accusing the NSA of doing is routing communication through the United States so that the NSA can tap onto this thing. And as far as standing goes, with as fast as the internet goes and with business transactions, isn't there a statement to be made that could slow down internet transactions and that would actually be a hindrance to business?
I think it would probably depend on how much it's slowing it down. I read articles on a lot of the stuff that's going on Wall Street with their millisecond trading for their programs, and the difference between literally being in like New York versus in New Jersey can really affect the money you make, because when everyone's trading at milliseconds, the time it takes for that information to get wires, even when it's running in milliseconds, the small difference can be millions of dollars. So I think it's a very reasonable argument, especially routing from anything besides maybe Canada or Mexico. That's going a long way to get information through the U.S. before going somewhere else.
That's what I was
So I think it's a valid point.
But if it's something like a credit card transaction, like somebody at the mall, if it takes 6 seconds or 3 seconds and you're at the point of sale, that really doesn't matter, especially if they still can't punch in your membership card correctly. Because even though the time difference, it depends on what industry you're in. Because if you're retail, then just somebody swipes, or everybody's been in a situation where they swiped their card, and then it's taken 10, 12, 15 seconds for it to go through, and sometimes it's taken 2 seconds. Does it really affect you, or does it really affect that specific store because there's a line of people? I mean, is this customer going to walk in and say, oh, it took 12 seconds instead of 2 for me to pay for my clothes?
But it does.
That's
I mean,
Forever
that's
21.
a personal thing, but
Yeah.
and this was when I read the argument, and that was the big thing to me is I mean, we're the center of internet transportation anyway, information transportation anyway. But if they're rerouting things just so that they can collect them, and then there's a statement to say you are slowing down the internet, even if it is just a few seconds, I mean, there's an aspect of going after a government agency on issues of state secrets and personal liberties is one thing, but going after them on the issue of you're hurting business, that's a completely different ballgame. And I think that's a way that hasn't been approached on some of this, especially with internet commerce, because it's not like there's a business section over here and there's a secret section over here. It's all one thing. And if you can show that any detriment to the internet is actually causing money problems in these millisecond transitions, then there's a lot of standing in that.
All right, well, stay with us. We're going to take a break, but we'll be right back.
I realized at that moment, these people really needed us. And I was going to make a difference, right here in my community.
Be there for your community at nationalguard.com.
Oh, hey, bud. Where are you headed?
Just gonna hang out.
With Gary and Todd?
Yeah?
I've been meaning to ask you, is there any drinking going on in this crowd?
No?
If any of your buddies ever pressure you to take a drink, just tell them you promised your dad you wouldn't. I'd do anything to keep you safe.
Okay, I will.
I hope this is working.
I promise. Love you too, Dad.
They really do hear you. For tips on what to say, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
When doctors told me I would never walk again, somehow I knew I would. Whether you need support in a tragedy or just to make it through a bad day, prayer can make a difference. America, let's come together by believing with each other.
Welcome back. Well, closing off our topic, Hunter, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think what will be really interesting after this NSA debate is to see if someone who, unlike Wikipedia, really can find, they can prove that they have standing. You know, with all the documents that have been dropped by Edward Snowden or WikiLeaks or anything else in the past, I'm sure there's someone who can see this case and think, oh, you know, this is similar to the way that I've been affected, but unlike them who are kind of reaching for a topic they say in theory could hurt business, could hurt us, they can prove they've been affected. And hopefully they can bring a case to go much further. Because as great as it is, it would be sad if the best we can say is at least they made us all aware of this situation.
So we'll see how this lawsuit unfolds. Moving on to our next topic. In U.S. News and World Report's latest rankings, UNLV's Boyd School of Law was ranked 67th in the nation. This is the highest ranking the law school has ever reached. Was this year a fluke, or is the law school taking the necessary steps to improve UNLV's move toward Tier 1 status? Doc, do you want to start us off?
First off, congratulations to the law school. Congratulations to UNLV. I adore my school and very happy about it. I think it seems as though in the last 2 years or 3 years, we've moved to this almost fanaticism with this Tier 1 to the extent of maybe even not discussing our mandated role as a land-grant university of educating the populace. And one of the difficulties, and congrats to Boyd Law School, and I hope that they keep rising and rising and rising, but moving towards this Tier 1 and moving us to this high level of research university. When you make that move, what you're doing is, to a certain extent, is you're taking away from the educational factor of the local community. We have a moral responsibility of educating the citizens of Nevada, and more importantly, the area citizens of Las Vegas. And the goal of moving to a Tier 1 is being this national university. And I don't even think we're accomplishing the mission of doing the local education. It just seems as there's a disassociation by measuring everything in relation to Tier 1 when maybe we should be measuring everything in relation to how we support our community and what purpose we are here for our community.
I also would say congratulations to the school. I think it's awesome. I've heard nothing but good things about our law school for years now, and it's cool to see that it's recognized. I think, and I mentioned 2 or 3 of our programs in the top 15. Our legal writing program is 3rd in the nation. That's awesome. It's really impressive that that school is getting the recognition. They're doing so well. But I would agree. I think that we have a lot to focus on as far as how we educate our students here and the money we spend doing it. I mean, I saw the president of the school, the new president, speak last week, and he talked about how excited he was. The governor was putting some more money into the school, and that is great, especially considering that the governor's budget has killed our funding for the last 3 or 4 years. Yeah. That when the recession was hitting, they thought the best way to solve it was to cut classes, cut teachers, cut programs here. So it's nice that money's coming back. There's a long way to go before we're back to where we were 5 years ago, 6 years ago, as far as funding and our reach. My minor was in environmental studies, and by the time I was in my last semester, there was not enough teachers teaching classes for me to actually finish my minor with classes that were in their curriculum. I had to take classes in sustainable construction and a few other genres just to complete my actual minor, because funding was cut so far that whenever they let a teacher go or a teacher left, they just didn't replace them. They were trying not to fire anybody, but they weren't bothering to restaff when they lost them. And it really affects, not even that's a big example in how it affected me, but there's much smaller ways, just as far as cutting sections, cutting availability, so it's much harder to graduate or harder to get the education that you thought you were going to get.
David, what do you think? I mean, with this new president being able to bring all these funds forward and, UNLV trying to get that medical school.
Yeah, the Governor Sandoval, despite his little hiccup of almost saying he was going to defund the medical school, now they're going to regularly fund it because politically he doesn't want to be the person that killed the UNLV medical school. I'm glad for Boyd, and they have been able to progress and move up in the ranks. And from what I've been told from some law students that are friends of mine is that the administration there, they kind of get a little secretive but a little smirky because they know that they're moving up in the ranks, but they won't say necessarily how much each year to year, but they know they are. And I'm glad that they are, and I'm glad UNLV is moving up. We have Brookings Mountain West here. We're getting this medical school. But there's still a very long way to go. Even just as a joke, it wasn't until 2 weeks ago that students were getting their letters saying they made the dean's list for last semester. And we're in March. It was at the end of February, the beginning of March, when people in the administration were there. I'm sure many students, including myself, because the administration has been so slow and not done their job properly, have been told that they can't graduate. Or the constant problem in advising, where advisors just don't know how to do their job, is the polite way to put it, when it takes an additional year for students to graduate because they only need one class to graduate, and so they have to take one semester off and then that one class the next semester because there isn't enough degree planning going out there. Yet every time that you get almost once a week in your student email account, you get told, oh, academic advising is doing something new. And of course, I just look at that email and think, liars.
Let me go ahead and take this opportunity to separate myself from him. And I love the school, and my paperwork has always been handled well.
But the issue is, as much as my haranguing is, I'm glad that there are improvements that are being made, but we have a lot of stuff that's helping us propel upward, but we still have a lot of stuff that's dragging us down.
Do you think it's a step, though, and definitely a recognition for UNLV?
It's definitely a big step, and especially because it's been going up the past 3 years, and I'm sure that it's going to keep going up. It wouldn't surprise me if in the next 5 years it breaches the top 50.
I was wondering, you were talking about how it took you a few extra classes outside of your actual minor. I don't know if you had heard about, there were sort of offering payouts to tenured professors here so they could get them out and bring in new. So I'm wondering if that funding...
They didn't necessarily bring in new.
Well, that's the goal eventually, I guess, somewhere down the line here.
The long-term plan.
That's the dream, I guess. But I was kind of wondering, with that funding coming in, do you think maybe it'll be dedicated to like the medical school or these, hard hitting, and maybe it will be into this sort of propelling them into maybe a tier 1 status if they really, are going for that, or giving back to the community? Or do you think it's just kind of a way to focus on the positive rather than the other things happening behind the scenes?
Well, I think it's definitely a positive. It's worth focusing on because even though it's tragic to see that money go in the first place, and we've had to pay for some of that with increased tuition on a yearly basis that seemed out of step with what you would expect. It's still good. We need to get better, and this law school, what they've done, it definitely helps us. And it makes us look better, and it will help attract students, and it gets our name out there. And the medical school is huge, and it's good that Sandoval did include it in his budget. But I know he's given about a third of what we asked for, so the rest is all we have to go out and try and get funds. And just judging from last year, we had the tax that was supposed to go to public schools. It was going to be to K through 12. It wasn't going to be going to college. But people don't like paying for things. And it was a 2% tax on business making over $1 million. I remember the bar I was working for was not
Well,
happy.
unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap it up here. We'll see what happens if UNLV takes additional necessary steps for that tier 1. That's all the time we have for today. Share your opinions and any ideas or topics you would like us to scramble about to thescramble.unlv@gmail.com. You can also catch full episodes of The Scramble at unlv.tv. From all of us here at The Scramble, thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you next time.